Welcome to The Good Ride, a place where when you can't try, you have this guy. And today, I'm talking about the Never Summer Eclipse, a new board for 2026 that seems to replace the Cougar, is more tapered and directional, but just about as centered on board, has that same recurve camber, but with a little more early rise, new carbon mapping. And while I do like the Never Summer Cougar a little better, I thought that was an amazing board. It's gone and we have this, and other than being a little washy in the tail and not having a lot of setback on board, it has a fast base, excellent grip. I love the stability and the extra pop you get out of this recurve camber with these passive bends. It gives you more pop than you would think for this amount of camber. I think Never Summer has something special with that camber profile, and it's nice to see it spreading throughout the line. So I rode this primarily with Union Force bindings and Nitro Team TLS boots, and I got this in a wide variety of conditions, everything from some powder to some good groomers to some not so great groomers, more firm but fair, and really got to get to know this board and compare it against a lot of boards like the old Cougar, the Proto Freeride, the new Proto Type 3 that's recurve camber as well with setback inserts, the Proto Ultra with setback inserts, and the Benchmark with setback inserts. It's so cool to see Never Summer's brand evolving and trying new things. And I also compared this against a lot of other freeride boards throughout the season. And speaking of, this is an honest, objective review for you, the consumer, and I can do that thanks to my sponsor, Blower Board Shop, a family-run business that's been selling to snowboarders forever. Longer than most resorts have been allowing snowboarders on the hill. So if you want to support a great shop with a large online presence, excellent pricing, customer service, and shipping, click through our links from The Good Ride to Blower Board Shop and buy something. Be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Now, when it comes to sizing, I feel like I'm in between sizes here. I'm very 160 curious. However, this did handle my weight well enough, and it turned well enough for my size 9 boots. Now, when it comes to shape, it has a nice big nose with good surface area, and then a tail that's 10 millimeters narrower, but also a lot less surface area and a much more pinched in tail. They set this back at 32 millimeters back from center of side cut. Now, if you look at reference stance, which I believe is this because that's where most brands put their reference stance, you're looking at 1.375 inches back from center of board at a 21-inch stance width. Now, if you want to set it all the way back, you're only looking at 2.5 inches back from center of board at a 21 3/4 inch stance width. So you basically have what I like for an all-mountain board in terms of setback, but on a tapered directional freeride shape. So it still sits a little bit on that border between all mountain and freeride. And when it comes to camber profile, they have a modified recurve camber profile in comparison to the Cougar, which had a more aggressive lift right where the camber ends and a higher camber point in the middle. This is a little less, but emulates the feeling of full camber without the catch. Thanks to this early rise, there's a lot more on the nose than my old Cougar and a decent amount before the tail. So this could work with just about any ability level, and I think committed beginners willing to spend a little cash might take a lump or two, but they'll be fine. And then intermediates, this is great for. Advanced expert riders, it's not going to be boring either. It has a really consistent, stable feel underfoot in all conditions, unlike the Proto Freeride that can feel a little unstable and hooky in some conditions when flat basing. When it comes to edge hold, this triple camber technology, along with this multi-radius side cut, does an amazing job at grip. It grips almost as hard as full-on aggressive original magnet traction without that grabby feel in softer snow. So this is a great board for those of you that live on the East Coast but also travel out west and want something that can handle each condition really well. Let's talk Eclipse Flex here. It is more on the medium side of things. Down by the tail, it's a good bit stiffer, and the nose feels softer. It's longer. There's more early rise here. So that's probably a contributing factor, but it's much softer there. And then in between the feet is pretty stiff, but it seems like Never Summer is doing cool things to mill out this nose and tail area to make it a little softer, easy to butter, easy to play around with and reduce weight. And then it has that typical Never Summer easy pop, but it's not as poppy as the old Cougar it replaced. And when it comes to buttering, I found that I could lean back into this tail and butter okay, and it was a little easier in the nose, which is a touch softer than the tail. And this new carbon mapping that you can see here throughout the board allows the flex of the tip and tail to be softer while still having the same pop of the previous construction. And speaking of pop, I feel this really is easy to access the pop, and while it's not as poppy as the Cougar, that thing was a pop machine, especially for being as forgiving as it was. This isn't there, but it's good enough, and it's really easy to ollie, and I find that it tracks really well into, pops off of, and lands really well on the small side hits. This could handle a big drop of any size off piste, or a big kicker in the park if you want to go there. And if you want to ride switch, I don't feel it was as good as the Cougar, but it's not bad, and it's a very good pipe board as well. And when you get this somewhat poppy but very damp flex personality into uneven snow, you can ride this in anything from hard micro bumpy snow. There's so much dampening put in underneath this hood that it keeps the edge so quiet and really holds better in hard uneven snow than a lot of boards I've compared this against, but yet doesn't take too much away from the pop. So great balance there. And in soft, thick, uneven snow, this did a great job. Even though it doesn't have a really high damp rating for Never Summer's line, if you compare it to the rest of the industry, this is very damp. Now, when it comes to turning, the turn initiation was really fast with this, even though it had a 25/9 waist, and it's a little wider than I normally prefer for my size 9 boots. Over the inserts, it initiated a turn really quickly. For tight tree lines, though, I didn't like it just because there's so much tail behind me. When I'm in the trees and the snow's uneven, I like being closer to the tail and having my nose up and not letting anything catch behind me. This feels too centered for those that really like that quick turning tight tree run kind of board. But as it stands, it's not bad at all for being so centered. Then when you get this on edge and try to engage it into a harder turn, this has very good spring out of the turn. Again, on same day tests, I liked the Cougar a lot better. It had a lot more drive, a lot more pop, a lot more spring out of the turn, but this was still pretty good, except for one thing. If I tried to front foot weight my turns like I could with the Cougar, I could front foot, center weight, and back foot weight the turn. All felt great. With this, if I front foot weighted the turn, the tail got washy. If I center weighted the turn and committed really hard, the tail could sometimes wash. When I back foot weighted the turn really hard and set this board back, it held better. If I owned this board, I'd ride it set all the way back all the time. And that helped hold this. This seems to really like a heavy back foot weighted turn in order to keep the tail from washing. And that personally for me was the deal breaker, because I actually love front foot, center foot weighted, and back foot weighted turns equally well, and this would only be a one-trick pony for me. But as it stands now, this has a pretty balanced turning radius. It doesn't mind a circle carve. It doesn't mind an across the groomer carve. Medium radius turns are really fun. As you get into longer, drawn-out turns, this isn't perfect for it, but it's not bad. And if you want to really open up and get some speed while you're making those down the line turns, or just go straight for a long sustained period, this will do pretty well. I actually preferred it more than the Proto Freeride that's rated as a damper, faster, stiffer board, But this recurve camber profile versus the triple camber fusion profile with the Proto Freeride, this just handled the snow flat-based better and felt more stable underfoot. And when it comes to base glide, it can get a little dry and thirsty like you see here at the end of my testing, but overall it has very good glide, and when well waxed, it's upper tier for sure. Not the best of the best, but definitely upper tier. And the base does hold its wax for a good amount of time, and you can go several days without waxing it, no problem. Now, when it comes to powder, I thought this was a slight improvement over the Cougar, but still for what I'm mainly riding these days, a lot of low angle powder, this setback on board just wasn't there. Getting off this and getting on the Benchmark made me really envious of the Benchmark's setback inserts, and I wish this had it, because as it stands for a freeride board, there isn't much setback on board, and you don't get that directional surfy feel that I like. And what I mean by surfy is the closer you get back to the tail, the more it feels like you're surfing in the ocean. And I'm a lifelong surfer. As it stands now, you're riding very centered. So if you're a big mountain rider who loves launching off cliffs or just big drops, and you like that centered feel with a lot of landing gear, this will be fine for you in powder. But if you're like me and you like that setback, easy cheater float, this might not be the board for you. So overall, I felt like the Cougar almost completed me, and this replaced that Cougar, and I'm gonna miss that Cougar. But this could be more fun if you like a more centered stance location on board, but in a tapered directional shape, so you can go big and have lots of landing gear, along with a very stable camber profile and excellent grip. This could work for you.